I actually asked UK, who should be our best, but they weren't our best. I said, I had some very bad allies in NATO, and we spend trillions of dollars on NATO, because they're a paper tiger.
Hi guys, I hope you're all well. Donald Trump gave several speeches in the last days, especially last week where he addressed the nation, speaking about the escalation and ongoing conflict situation with Iran and his understanding and view also on allies, on NATO specifically. In general, he spoke a lot. He didn't really say anything new, nothing we haven't heard a million times before of how great the US, the military is, that the war is over, everything is fine, they're making good progress and so on and so forth. But there are several points and snippets I want to touch base on what he said now specifically with regards to his allies and NATO. The first thing I would like to touch base on is what he said with regards to the Strait of Hormuz. He basically said it falls on the US allies to go there and basically now start opening the Strait of Hormuz to take the lead, and that the US allies can easily do so. Now, we all know that's simply not true. The US has the greatest, biggest military that Trump mentions all the time. And if they cannot do so, certainly the NATO, the US allies, European partners can definitely not do so. Not by military forces, not by capacity, not monetarily, by any means. So it raises a simple question. If the most advanced military in the world cannot open the strait, why would he announce that the US allies do so when certainly they can not? We all know it's not about the ships, the blockage in the water that makes it difficult to open the strait. It's about the other military forces Iranians have from the land, missiles, drones, bombs, you name it, whatever. So logically speaking, the only way to open it is long-lasting and forced group invasion of the country of Iran. That would take a lot of time. So let me ask you, who is volunteering for that? I don't see any hands going up, not even the US. Hence, maybe this is just pressure and forcing on US allies. Having said all of this, the real question is now, where does this leave NATO? Because Trump said some really, really interesting things that we're going to get into now. Have a look.
I actually asked UK, should be our best. In fact, the king is coming over here in 2 weeks. He's a nice guy, King Charles. But should be our best, right, Brooke? But they weren't our best. I said, you have 2 old, broken-down aircraft carriers. You think you could send them over? Oh, I'll have to ask my team. I said, you're the prime minister. You don't have... No. I have to ask my team, President. My team has to meet. We're meeting next week. Oh, next week? But the war already started next week. It's not good. The war's going to be over in 3 days. France, Macron, whose wife treats him extremely badly. And he's still recovering from the right to the jaw. And I say, Emmanuel, we'd love to have some help in the Gulf, even though we're bad people and knocking out ballistic missiles. No.
So here, a couple aspects on this. I mean, it doesn't really seem, from my point of view, very professional to mock others and criticize others on a personal level. I can understand the frustration and the criticisms of allies being called out by not helping. He's touching base on Macron and Keir Starmer from the UK on not helping in the Iran escalation as NATO, as US allies. It's funny or bizarre, interesting at least to say that he gets down on a personal, private level, attacking them. He's making a good point. The prime minister of a country doesn't need to ask his staff, his people, whether they are ready or not, whether they can attack or not. In fact, he's calling them out. Keir Starmer is the prime minister. He shouldn't need to ask anyone. He should be the one being in charge, being responsible, and say, yes, we're going to help you or not, and not defer responsibility to his staff, to the Marine, by saying, I need to ask them whether they're ready or not. He should know whether they're ready or not, and then command so, saying yes or no, but not downplaying his responsibility.
No. We cannot do that, Donald. We can do that after the war is won. I said, no, I don't need after the war is won, Emmanuel. We've had some very bad allies in NATO, and, we spend trillions of dollars on NATO, and when we need them, which we never do, we didn't need them here either, To be honest, I was really asking because I wanted to see what they do. We didn't need them. We're blasting the hell out of them.
So he is saying basically this was a test for NATO to see whether they would like to participate or not. I personally believe that he wanted NATO and allies to join, not really from tactical, strategical ground air force forces, but from a cost involvement. And that I've also laid out in the NSA National Security Strategy paper by the US, deferring cost shifting burdens to partners. However, not mixing them up in the day-to-day operations and execution. According to the Financial Times, Trump also threatened to hold weapons supply to Ukraine unless Europe helps with opening the Strait of Hormuz. Exactly here, touching base on this. I think this was just a test verbally, and now he's using the Strait of Hormuz as leverage. Let me explain. We already established, and what we saw is if the US alone cannot open the strait alone, then obviously Europe cannot either, because it's not about the strait alone. It never was about NATO. It was about chain of command, about control. For a long time, people believed that the structure of NATO allies was an allianceship of equal partners, but it never was. US always here, up in the chain of command, all the other partners here. And that gap has been widening and now trying to shifting and burden costs to ally partners. In the past, that structure was maintained through diplomacy because the interests were aligned. But the difference is the interests now in that defractured, starting to deglobalize world, we are seeing a shift in the divergences in the world. Reorganization. Now, America's first appeasement policy has way different objectives, interests than that of US ally partners, NATO, European members. Also then what is Israel, the Gulf state, the GCC states are doing, Asia is doing, Russia, and so on and so forth. So we are seeing a divergence in national interests also within NATO partnerships and members.
The last thing I needed was NATO stepping in our way because they're a paper tiger.
This is what I mean. How do you bring everyone back in line when diplomacy is not enough anymore? It isn't. This is where Hormuz, other occasions, leverage comes in for the US to use the same as tariffs. Situations where the US now with Trump uses pressure to realign its allies. And it's all straight playing out there in the NSA strategy paper. By saying NATO is a paper tiger, he hinted at reconsidering US membership. Now, many believe the US might leave NATO. I personally don't see it, and I'm telling you right now why. There is no real upside. Yes, you might say save money on paper, but in reality, the US would be giving up one of the single most powerful force multiplier the US has ever built. Because NATO is just not military alliance, it's infrastructure, it's access, it's positioning, it's leverage, cost-shifting burdens to allies, and so on and so forth. It's a strategic and tactical partnership between allies. And right now, the US operates through a dense network of bases, logistic hubs, intelligence sharing, and forward deployments across Europe, where they have also tactical bases like here in Germany, Ramstein, to use in order to, from a proxy position, control and steer tactical engineering and forces. And all that happening under NATO umbrella. So if the US leaves NATO, the entire system doesn't just continue as is. Every single base, every troop deployment, every logistical corridor suddenly becomes a bilateral negotiation, country by country, government by government, with their own bilateral conditions, paperwork, bureaucracy, and so on and so forth. And those governments, they now have also leverage back on the US. Tons of negotiation, paperwork, bureaucracy, regulations. Every country on a bilateral basis can now demand higher payments. They can impose political conditions, restrict operations, ask for more money for using their infrastructure access, and so on. Of course, it goes bilateral. The US can do so back, but it would be an organizational, regulatory mess, total nightmare. So instead of controlling the system, the US would be negotiating with the complete system, and that's a fundamental shift. But it goes even deeper. Without NATO, the US loses its forward positioning advantage. Instead of projecting power from within Europe, it has to project power into Europe if that NATO alliance would be dissolved. That means longer supply lines, higher costs, lower response times. In a real crisis that matters, and it also downshifts and downplays military securitization and security for American soil. And also let's touch base on the intelligence service. NATO is one of the most advanced intelligence sharing networks in the world. Take that away alone and the US doesn't just lose allies, it loses visibility and finally influence. Because NATO is just not about defense, it's about shaping decisions. If you're inside the structure, you set the agenda, which the US has been, but also with increasing cost burdens for the US. If you're outside, you react to it. Leaving NATO doesn't really reduce complexity. It increases it. It doesn't reduce costs. It redistributes it, often higher. And most importantly, it weakens the US control over the very system it spent decades building. So it's all about leverage. The US using NATO and Europe's security concerns to bring Europe back into alignment. That brings me to something very interesting to what Trump just said in the White House recently now when he was asked on his stance of future cooperation and view on NATO. Have a listen to that. On considering what everything I just said, how this plays into that.
Are you rethinking the United States' relationship with NATO possibly getting out?
Well, I'm disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. I'd work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But you know, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine. Look, Ukraine would have been over in one day if we didn't help. Frankly, Ukraine would have been over in the first day. They had the best equipment in the world. It was our equipment.
So again, Trump is reiterating on NATO is paralyzed, not really helping. He's disappointed on allies' behavior, while the US is paying for decades tons of money into NATO and not even the so-called test of allied partners reaching and giving him out the hand. By no means I'm judging whether the NATO allies should or shouldn't help him. That's totally a different topic, but I understand his point of view that the US is spending trillions of money for decades, yet when he's asking his allies for support, they do not do so, which inevitably for him raises the question, why do we have such alliance? When we are the ones paying, we are basically protecting all of NATO, but we do not get any support or help back. But touching back again on my points, they are receiving a lot of indirect, invisible support by access into intelligence, infrastructure, digital infrastructure, military infrastructure, checkpoints to use for all the stated reasons I just mentioned. I don't believe that the US is considering pulling out because it would have a net negative effect, long-term disadvantage, and even higher burdens. I personally believe it's leverage. Like with energy, like with the Strait of Hormuz, with everything we are just touching base on, it's leverage to get the US into a better negotiating positioning, like with tariffs, to in the end get a better deal out by increasing verbal pressure in terms of alliances and partnership. It's leverage. The US using NATO and Europe's security concerns to bring back everyone into alignment. And that also fits into what some of European diplomats are saying, that NATO is paralyzed. They can't even hold meetings. It's already falling apart. These are statements from European officials. You don't normally hear that. So why now? Because something is shifting. The US always had an economic arm, a political arm, but it never had its own security protection because NATO filled that role. So what's changing now? It's a good moment for the US to use strategic leverage in NATO and to defer cost burdens to partners, while at the same time Europe can, within that existing NATO framework, create a perfect opportunity to push into that empty space that the US does not want to fill anymore. So saying it in different terms, I don't see the US pulling out of NATO, but forcing more costs and more responsibility on European partners to fill that gap and also being more self-responsible in terms of their security. It tells us we are moving to a different world with more autonomy, but also more costs for European allies. All, of course, my opinion and view on that. In the end, I see it as always. Trump has big verbal guns, using it or pre-announcing it for pressure on negotiation terms, favoring afterwards the Americans or US in terms of results